Hello everyone, welcome to Lunch with Leaders. You can see a few people have joined us already. So welcome to Lunch with Leaders, a conversation about leadership, team engagement, and overall creating a bigger impact. And welcome Craig, thank you so much for joining us today. I will do a quick introduction of Craig so you all get across what he is all about. So Craig has worked in the not-for-profit sector for the past 15 plus years across various roles, building skills of managing complex multi-stakeholder projects, strategic planning, service design, evaluation and research, and building productive work cultures, before joining Playgroup SA as a CEO this year. And I actually invited him to the session because of how he creates his work around impact measurement, innovation, and organizational development. And like me, he is really passionate about human-centered design and a shared decision-making to create meaningful solutions. And Craig's focus is on building capability within the community services sector to support and scale collective impact initiatives, mature methodologies for impact measurement, and build improved work cultures through a focus on values, leadership, and accountability, ultimately to reach and support outcomes for everyone in the community. Craig also authored a chapter on conceptual foundations for collective impact users in a textbook, very impressive. And he is a recipient of the Joe Balderston Prize for the highest aggregate grade of the Master of Public Administration postgrad degree at Flinders University. Awesome achievements. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Craig. It's great to have you here. Maybe we start with telling us a little bit more about what Playgroup SA is. What the organization stands for, what is it all about, and what's your vision and what services you provide?
Yeah, definitely. So just to start off, I've been with Playgroup SA since February this year, so it's a relatively new sort of role for me, coming in as the Chief Executive Officer, but a great opportunity, and it ties in a lot of my history. Now, as an organisation, we've been around for about 45 years, and the focus has really been on supporting early childhood development outcomes, supporting parents in the community, have access to resources, and through that playgroup model, having a place to, build, improve social connections and everything. Now, around the vision and purpose of the organisation, having just come in February, I was really fortunate to be able to start that strategic planning process with the board. It was just the right time for it. So our new vision, now this isn't actually been released publicly or anything yet, so a sneak preview for everyone here. Our vision is looking very likely to be all children in South Australia are developmentally on track. So already when we start thinking about impact, we can look at how we can sort of measure that through the Australian Early Development Census. And that's, the vision actually ties into some of the language they use in measurement through the ADC as well. So that's, I guess, Playgroup SA's vision, and our purpose is looking at how we can support parents and communities to achieve or improve children's development. So there already we begin to see a nice coherence between the vision we have, which is that overarching sort of where we're going in the future, and our clear purpose. Now, we've kind of dropped our mission at this point. We just decided to go for a vision and a purpose. So that's us going forward. I guess just a little bit more about Playgroup SA. We have a range of different programs and services. So from universal access points, which is through the playgroup model, to supported playgroups, so supporting children and families with a disability, or in areas where there can be some circumstantial disadvantage based on the area. So that's where we're paying facilitators to go in and run the group and help, the children, families and communities achieve those outcomes. So we really try to position Playgroup in a way that we can see how it fits in from a statutory intervention end right through to the universal platform. So that's our sort of current programs. And we're looking to really, I guess in the future, open up a focus on workforce capability. So just as for all organisations, I think it's important to support our staff and have them, I guess, build their own capabilities. It's also, we see our role there as being, I guess, a bit of a peak body and able to support the broader community services, health and education sectors. So already, yeah, you can see pathways for, say, new parents. They've and I've actually spoken to a few parents about this. They might have been in finance or other industries. They've then had their babies, and then they've come into a playgroup and gone, wow, I really enjoy this. Then they want to run their own playgroup, and they start saying, well, I think I'd love to work in education. So early on, when we're thinking about serving our communities, which I think in the not-for-profit world is really important to see us as almost subservient to community and being able to be as responsive to their needs through the human-centred design stuff. We can then begin to form a holistic strategy for the workforce, for the communities themselves. So then there's an inroad, there's a really easy way for these parents to start doing some learning, which is benchmarked against the Australian qualification framework, and then they've, you know, got some recognised prior learning for the future. So in a nutshell, that's sort of where we're going for the future and our vision and purpose at this point.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. I really like how you talk into how you're consulting with people, because I think that's the most important part of really having services that service the community, is to get the feedback and to talk to people. You know, I work in volunteer management, and it's exactly the same thing. And sometimes, you know, in all the administration and all the reporting and structure, I think that gets left behind a little bit. That we basically just have to have conversations, and we will find out the way and build the strategies around the right things.
Definitely. And I think it's really good when we think about that. There's a thing called the Subsidary Principle, and what that means is putting the decisions as close to the people who are impacted by whatever issues it might be or whatever they're doing. So when I think about the kind of support we might offer our community playgroups, we've looked at developing up and started to do a communities of practice model. So we send out ahead of time what's working for everyone, all of our community playgroup leaders. What challenges are there, and what would you like to learn more about? So ahead of time, we're prepared, we're planned, we know the sort of content that they want to be discussing. And then at the same time, we're creating a real learning environment for all of those leaders, which we think is starting to work really well. And then I think, particularly in the social services sector, for some time, we seem to, I think the traditional sort of way of operating is we go into communities and we say, oh, there's a few child protection issues here, some you know, financial income issues no one's managing. So then I think, and I'm not targeting policymakers by any stretch, but we often have had a tendency to go, here's the problem, here's what we know about the data, and then we design the solutions. This sort of professional, almost what I'd probably term professional arrogance on. And I think if we come back to that subsidiarity principle, if we can go in using those human-centred design methods, which actually acknowledge, yes, we understand here's the data, but what's the story behind the data? And if we can engage those conversations with the people that really matter, who the problem is affecting the most, then I would put a case forward that we might be more likely to actually achieve some of those outcomes and truly the impact that we're looking for.
Yeah. Absolutely. It almost sounds too simple, you know, like sometimes I think it's overcomplicated with more studies and more studies and more studies rather than just having a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. It's sort of every time we're going to put together a new policy or a program, we need, you know, reams of evidence to back what we're doing. And sometimes, you know, the simplest things can work the best. And often, you know, I think we've seen in some different countries lately the importance of social connections and actually really measuring that as rather than say GDP. So if we can come back to that human level, recognise the importance of connecting in our communities, hopefully we can begin to overcome some of those social ills. But of course, I think, you know, I don't want to discount the evidence altogether because it's pretty important for being able to, I guess, measure what we're doing, measure it authentically, and then be able to report that back. So, yeah, you know, having a strategy that sits around for an organisation, sort of performance measurement kind of strategy is pretty important going forward.
Yeah.
You know, what is the return on investment for all of the activities, for all of the projects that any organisation is delivering, and recognising that every single program that your organisation may be delivering, whether it's a program, an event, or whatever, there's such an important piece of measurement that needs to go along with that. It doesn't need to be complicated. We can simplify these things quite easy, and then aligning them back into your, you know, your vision, your purpose, and your key strategies is quite crucial. So, you know, I encourage all organisations out there to set some sort of program planning standards, which can then begin to embed some really great tools that are out there. Now, I often use results-based accountability as a bit of a 101. For those that aren't aware, results-based accountability, which I refer to as RBA from here out, asks sort of 7 key questions. But most importantly, it says, you know, what is the key result you're looking for to achieve in whatever program or event it is. Can even apply it to people and culture or HR and finances as well. It says, you know, what will it look like when you actually achieve this result? So it's giving you some insights into what it will look like and what it will feel like. And then it asks sort of, how will you measure your results? And this was a bit of a watershed moment for me when I saw this. So just about all performance measures in the history can come down to 3 different types. How much did we do? So they're the outputs, they're the usual, how many people attended, how many sessions have we delivered, how well did we do it? Now that's where we're looking at satisfaction or the quality of the services that we're delivering. And the final one, the best, but often the most difficult, is anyone better off as a result of attending our programs?
Yeah.
So you begin to set your sort of performance measures around that.
Yeah.
The other thing it does really, really well is it separates out performance and population accountability. So when we talk about performance accountability, we're talking about the single programs, services, events that are happening in the service system. And it says population accountability is very different. That's where you're looking at your whole of population. So it could be your whole of people experiencing a disability, your whole of cultural, linguistic diverse. They're your different populations. And it reminds us that no single program in a system, it's a big claim, but I think it's pretty supported. Essentially, no single program is going to be able to have a population impact unless it's really scaled up. And it gets us thinking a bit more quantitatively about the amount of people that are attending our programs versus the amount of people that are actually affected by whatever issue that is.
Yeah.
So for me, the RBA is a really good starting point. And then, so you've got your performance measures. The other thing to add about RBA is it's ends to means. So it starts with what result you want first, rather than how you're going to do it. So once you've got your result, you understand the sort of challenge, what that result will look like when it comes to life. You've got your performance measures, how much, how well, better off. You then begin to go, well, what could we do differently? What are the different brainstorming things that we can go through, different actions that we can take? It asks, who are the partners that we need to work with through this process as well? And then finally, you begin to put your plan in place. Now, personally, I found working in different collective impacts with different teams across my last few years, it's been such a good engagement tool as well as a awesome planning tool. If there's anyone out there in the policy world that's listening in or watching in the future, if you check out Vermont in America, they actually used RBA to set some outcomes that they wanted to achieve in their communities and state, and they legislated outcomes. So all funding that was going to be applied needed to show how they were going to achieve these outcomes. So that was pretty amazing. I was speaking with a minister here the other day and suggesting that going forward, that could be a way forward. We'll see. We might not be that forward thinking just yet. But
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest impact on non-for-profits is the reporting is all around, you know, the measurements, how many people attended, how many people recruited, and the success almost is based on how many people attended, not on the quality as much. And because that's what we need to report. And I hear that all the time about the volunteer programs, you know, all that matters is the numbers. Nobody cares if people actually turned up and if we actually delivered the service properly. I mean, it's part of it, but it's a bit harsh to say it like this, but it's the gist of it. And I think that's a really good point if actually government can look more at what outcomes are we delivering on a qualitative level, then the funding will be a lot better allocated, I think. And organizations are almost forced to work on the results-based accountability. And I love that approach. So do you have, is that something like a template that you followed, or like is it something we can perhaps share with everyone watching?
Yeah, definitely. Look, there's, well, when it comes to the RBA kind of approach, that there are many templates online that you can find. And what I might do after is I'm quite happy to send through some links where anyone who's interested can find some more information on that. And yeah, I could probably find a template to send through too. But as I say, it's sort of it's a starting point for us. And as we go on and we really go a bit deeper on how we're going to measure our outcomes and everything, and that's where we begin to see other sort of tools come into it, like you've got sort of theory of change, you've got program logics, and then I guess I'll be moving into the sort of social return on investment. Now, with your RBA, you begin to understand, you know, what outcomes you're looking at. Now, program logic gives you a really nice visual sort of way to look at what is the problem we're trying to address here. It then sort of looks at what inputs you're putting in, what activities you're delivering as well. So it's quite, I think, goes activities, what inputs, and then your outputs, sort of, which is your how much do we do, and then you get to your sort of short-term, medium, and long-term outcomes in most program logics. Now, the thing probably important to remember is that the further we move away from short-term outcomes, the more difficult it becomes to measure them. So over time. So, well, I think in our world, in the not-for-profit world, who are working in human and social services, it's important not to be over-claiming what we say we're doing or what we say we want to do. And we begin to be able to look at things like contribution analysis. What contribution is our program making to this outcome. And I think as we go forward and we see more place-based initiatives coming up, like Communities for Children, or the Stronger People, Stronger Places initiative from DSS, the importance of collaboration and collective impact and working together to those outcomes will become more important. Now, I should mention, so yeah, our sort of planning standards going forward, we're starting with RBA, we move into program logic, and then we develop a service model which has the sort of theoretical and evidence stuff, which can be a little tedious to work through, but that's fine. And then the big question I think we're hearing from government, from philanthropists, from impact investors is, what impact? What impact are you having back in your communities? So quantifying that, measuring that can be really challenging. However, there are lots of supports out there. So it's really a question of, provided you've done your homework and you've got your outcomes clearly articulated and noted, and you can show how they break down into your performance measures or indicators, if you will, and then what questions are answering those indicators, which go back to being able to deliver on your outcomes. So you can see that clear, logical sort of transition from outcome to the questions. It's then, well, what is the return on investment? So let's say we're talking about recidivism. Okay, so there's a cost for people reoffending and going back into the correction system. So we can begin to understand the cost, or we can do an actuarial analysis and all of that. So then our sort of claims become, okay, so if we're going to invest in this program and we can achieve this outcome, preventing someone going back to prison, then that has returned X amount of dollars back to society. And they're the kind of, that's the kind of future direction. I think we're trying to get a bit more technical around how we do this work. So that's what we're looking at doing and trying to quantify much better. We have a number of financial proxies for, intervening in whether it's child protection or any developmental delays. If we can support these kids to be developmentally on track at an earlier stage, there's going to be a bigger saving to government. So the social return on investment is a great approach. There's various trainings out there that you can do as well, which can be quite helpful.
Training in...
Sorry?
Training what? Sorry, training for?
Training for social return on investment. So if you can have a look at social ventures, I think one of that do that. I can send through some links too. So yeah, we're beginning to look at how we can better quantify our impact in different communities. So let's say you have 2,000 children living in the city of Playford, which is an area north in Adelaide, and we reach 200 of those children, and we know through our measurement system, and we've sent out our outcome surveys, that 75% of those children have actually now developmentally on track where they weren't before. Then from a sort of population level, we've reached, is that about 20%, 10%? However, anyone feel free to jump in on my math there, that's great. And there's some really good software around which can do that as well, which can actually tie in, your evaluation plans, and it can send out your outcome surveys to your different customers, provided you've set financial proxies into that software. It then links in with, say, ABS data or World Bank data to actually give you your return on investment.
Oh, great. So it actually uses qualitative data as well, which is surveys and you can kind of feed into that as well. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's often missing, and it's considered a bit soft and we need, the hard numbers, but the impact on the community is often, it's, like, how can we quantify that? It's, it's often not a number, but it's huge because it has those ripple effects on, on families and then their friends and communities and so on. So it just keeps going and going.
Yeah, I think, look, effectively it is a quantitative tool, the surveys that go out, but, there's space in there for the qualitative analysis too. I think the mixed methods approach is always beneficial, because we can often go in through this sort of planning process going, here's the outcomes we're going to achieve, and we forget about the potential unintended outcomes that may happen as a result. So going in and running those focus groups can then inform your own quality improvement sort of cycles and continuous improvement that you can do around here, and you might set new outcomes based on that too.
Awesome. So something you said in the very beginning was your vision, the new vision you created for Playgroup SA, and I love that because it is really outcome based, and the previous vision, if I can say so, is still on your website, and it was to create opportunity for every child to learn through quality experiences and so on, which is very nice. But it's I think it's a great example because it is actually what you do. You're providing experiences, and whereas your new vision is all children in South Australia are developmentally on track, is actually, the big picture, which I think it's just a really nice little example for everyone to see what's the impact of having a really great articulated vision, and how that then translates into the actions that you take from there, and how you plan all your strategies.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our strategic plan should be up in the next month or two. But you're right, it is really informing holistic thinking for us as an organisation. We're starting to really look, as I was saying before, around that sort of learning and workforce capability piece. It's saying, well, if all children in South Australia are going to be developmentally on track, which is probably a long way off and some utopian dream, but what are all of those different pieces of the puzzle that we need to pull together to really achieve that vision? So it's not just the community playgroups, it's the supported playgroups. It's helping all communities and children of all backgrounds and all diversity, and of course the workforce piece too. So it's about, bringing together all of those different strategies and really positioning ourselves as leaders in this space too. Yeah,
and as you say, it opens up a bigger thinking. It's not focusing only on the current programs, but it gives you new ideas for other things. And so I know we are almost up on time, but one of the things I really wanted to dig into is how do you approach that with your team? Like, how big is your team would be interesting to know, but how do you get everyone into the same action?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you mentioned in my intro, I'm quite interested in that sort of human-centered design, and I mentioned that subsidiarity principle as well. So how do you get people to how do you enable their own leadership? So, well, when I started here at Playgroup SA, I guess for want of a better description, it was a traditional hierarchy. There was the CEO, and then most people reporting directly to the CEO. Now, we only have, to your question before, we have about 9 people here at our head office, and then we have 4 remote facilitators working, from Anglevale to Mount Gambier and Port Augusta. So I've been doing a bit of thinking and a bit of reading around how can we better enable people to really find their drive and their ambition and get their aspirations and capability. And I thought what we really need is some kind of leadership revolution. So I prefer to be able to work with leaders who can, you know, I guess, develop their own programs, their own ideas, and foster that innovation within our workplace. So one of the early things I did was I asked everyone to reflect here in the office at you know, what's your contributions here, and what do you want your role to be? So I've asked them to basically retitle themselves and reconceptualize their contribution to that vision and to the purpose of Playgroup SA. And it was, I guess, trying to work through that idea of them making decisions for themselves and working with each other. So instead of, you know, your traditional hierarchy that goes like that, we're now conceptualizing it as a sphere kind of thing. And then there's different slices of that sphere which have the different functions of the organisation, and very deliberate. It's different people are leading different projects. Now I'm part of other people's project teams. So if I'm underperforming and I'm over budget, and I'm accountable to the staff that are leading those sort of projects. So it's not just about, I guess, saying, oh, here's a new title, here's how we're working. It's also about supporting staff with having the right tools, having the right planning tools, and always being available as well, I think. Whether or not it's in person, it's, you know, you're there to be responsive. So
absolutely.
We also, the other thing we did, we started talking about values and what do we really value as a team? How are we going to work together? So we came up with quite a list of values and a definition for them. And I tried to have as little input into that, just more facilitated it. And then the really good news is I presented that to the board, suggesting that maybe this could be the whole organisation's values going forward, and that's been largely adopted and accepted. So it was really good to see, awesome. I guess, the team here taking leadership in those roles.
Yeah, but I think the key point in that is that you allowed that as, you know, as their leader to bring themselves in and to have that ownership as well, rather than, you know, controlling every task, is to be open to that input. And it's proven that when people have more ownership, that they are more engaged, more productive, more stay longer. So it's all great benefits. It's probably a little bit early to tell, but have you seen any impact from that?
Yeah, look, I think so. Impact, you know, from a almost output kind of perspective, just a change in processes and almost a desire, a want to actually, I guess, expand their own roles with adding different things in that they can be doing, better utilisation of our software and everything. So it's been quite good. The other thing I wanted to add as well is I like this idea of safe to fail. So it's okay to try something and not actually succeed at times. So that safe to fail, I think, can lead to better innovation as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you practice that with your team as well?
Sorry?
You practice that with your team as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So different projects. So I was mentioning before, you know, working through developing new role profiles and new titles and everything. We've talked about, you know, when you're looking at the different functions in your role, if you want to take on a new project, hey, that's great. Let's negotiate that in. And then it's sort of that getting back to that core responsibility as well, that individual taking responsibility for any new ideas, and they can lead that and getting that. Back.
And that's the way of innovation. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. I could talk to you for hours, to be honest, but I'm just conscious that we have gone over the half an hour. But I would love to have you back one day, and perhaps once you're a little bit further in and we'll see the bigger impact, and we can share a little bit more. For everyone who is online, we will be sharing the links about everything we discussed in a couple of days. And we hope that you enjoyed this. Is there anything that you still want to add before we finish?
Oh, look, I think just thank you, Jana, for the opportunity to speak with you and everyone else that's watching too. Feel free to share my email address around, and if anyone wants to get in contact and ask any other questions, I'm here. So that's great
awesome.
too.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for your time and for sharing so generously about your approach and your strategies. I think it's really valuable for other leaders to hear that and to be able to tap into some of these strategies and improve themselves. Because in the end, we're all here to create a bigger impact, and that's what we're passionate about. So that's why we are working in non-for-profits. So I think that's amazing. So well done, all the great work. Keep going, and I will speak to you really soon.
Okay.
And thanks everyone for joining us. Speak soon. Bye.
Bye.